started if everyone is here. I'm Marcy Skyler, Chair of the
Living in the construction world.
That's right. Chair of the Mississippi Charter School Authorizing Board. This regularly scheduled meeting of the NCSAB is being held today, Monday, January 27th, 2025 at 1 p.m. The notice of this meeting, which included the date, time, place, and purpose of the meeting, and identified virtual attendance available to the public has been posted. An audio recording is being made of the meeting, and minutes of this meeting will be recorded. This meeting is being called to order at 1:08 p.m. on Monday, January 27th, 2025. As I call the name of board members, please state the location of your presence for this meeting. Jay Carney.
Present, boardroom.
Felicia Gavin.
President, Mississippi Department of Education.
Sandra McKiernan. Ben Morgan.
President from Laurel, Mississippi.
Candace Robbins.
Present in the boardroom.
Jennifer Whittier.
President in Brookhaven, Mississippi.
And I'm Marcy Scoggins, and I'm present here in the boardroom. A quorum is present for conducting the meeting. At this time, I would like to call on our board member, Mr. Jay Carney, to lead us in the prayer and pledge.
All right, let us pray. Father, this is a day that you have made, and we do look to you for wisdom and guidance. Lord, we rejoice in this day, and we are glad in it. Thank you, Lord, for the opportunity to be here, whether it's in person or on the call. God, we ask for your guidance. We ask for your wisdom. We ask for your direction in every decision that we make. Let it bring you glory. Let it bring you honor. Lord, we ask all these things. In Jesus' name we pray. And everyone say amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much for that. At this time, I will entertain a motion for the approval of the agenda, but we do need to approve it and then ask for amendment. I will ask for, I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the agenda. Please identify yourself for the record. Motion.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second, Jennifer.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion carries. We will have one amendment to the now adopted agenda to include item C, Mississippi Global Academy's ESP contract. Mississippi Global Academy's contract will become a sub-item, and we will take that up before we consider their charter contract for item C. So at this time, I will entertain a motion to amend the agenda.
So moved, Jay Carney.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I seconded, Felicia Gavin.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. We've received a copy of the December 12th meeting minutes. I will entertain a motion for approval of those minutes. Please identify yourself for the record. Is there a motion?
So moved, Jennifer.
Is there a second?
Angela.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Because I wasn't here, so I just would rather not.
At this time, I don't really have anything for the chairman's report except to thank the staff for the beautiful annual report. I haven't seen the printed copy, but the digital copy was amazing. Y'all did a great job on that, so thank you for all of your work. Now for the executive director's report, I will turn the floor over to you.
And thank you to the public who is here with us today. We appreciate your attendance. I really don't have much to share today. We hit the ground running in January when we got back from the holidays, and I don't think we've stopped long enough to take a breath since then. So we've had a lot going on. As you know, the legislature's in session, so that's keeping us hopping. We're watching several different bills and having hearings and the budget hearings and so forth. So we've been super busy and, trying to wind down a few things like the annual report and then pick up the next task at hand. So just carrying it on and staying busy.
Thank you so much. The next agenda item is the financial report, and for that, I will recognize Ms. Denise DeRossi.
This report covers the period from the last board meeting. So it covers the period of December 5th through January 22nd or 23rd. During this time, we spent $101,156. And that's higher than the previous reporting period, but mostly it's because we had 2 separate payroll cycles during this time. So otherwise, it would have been pretty much where we normally are. I also want to point out one thing. In the last meeting, I talked to you about we had expenses for the forum. This time you will see some negative expenditures because we had a credit come back from that. And so we had a credit of $799 for the room rental. We also had a credit for some commodities. So that's why you'll have a negative amount on your report. I just wanted to explain that. And then I just wanted to tell you too, whenever we have a refund like that, we net it against the expenses that have already occurred. So we get our spending authority back. So it's not considered revenue. It's a refund of an expense. To my knowledge, we have not received any money from Instant Impact. I think their extension is still in effect for them to remit their money. So the only revenue we collected in this last reporting period was just under $53, and that was for a public records request where the people wanted to know what kind of purchase orders you all had entered in a 3-month period. And so that's the only revenue that we really have to report. Last month, I reported that we did have a federal grant, and I realized that your expenditure report did not have any information on that. So I thought, instead of just mentioning it, I have now included it as part of the report. And I do want to let you know that the grant itself was for $510,000, but the proposal that was submitted was less than that. And so even though it looks like we've spent just about everything but $17,000, it's really closer to $7 that's left to be spent because those funds, the vendor did not use the entire grant for the equipment that was ordered. And we have drawn down the money that has been spent except for the last draw. And we're doing that according to the schedule of the federal grant. We'll split it, yeah. And then I don't know if there's still a payment still to be made of that $7,000, I think. I haven't seen that last invoice. But we're close to having that grant finished and the schools received their equipment.
They have all received their equipment.
That's right. I don't know if Ben would like to report on on what happened at the State Personnel Board. Or I can go ahead and make a comment here.
Happy to say anything if I need to.
Feel free, yes, sir.
Pursuant to our decision at the last meeting regarding the increase in the executive director's salary, I went before the State Personnel Board, made that recommendation, and seek approval, which is something we are required to do by statute with respect to the salary of the executive director. And they approved that, partially, it was we went up to $147,000 instead of the $154,000 that we had requested. The state personnel board also told me that they would like to see us consider regular annual adjustments as appropriate and consistent with other activity of the state personnel board instead of waiting a year or two and taking longer periods of time to make that request. So to my fellow board members, I think that's something we can consider in the future as we move forward.
Thank you so much.
I just want to say that, we had tried to make that salary adjustment in July. And so since the state personnel board has said, let's do it annually, I would not wait until next January or next December. I would go ahead and start that process when you had intended for it to happen and just see what, we could start it earlier. And we were able to get it retroactive to the date that y'all made it effective in your minutes. And so Lisa will see that in her paycheck back to December. And the only other thing that I have on my report is about the appropriation hearings. Lisa mentioned that we went before the House and the Senate for the legislative appropriation hearings. She had a great PowerPoint presentation. I don't know if it was included in your board packet.
It's on the website, so it's not in the packet, but it is on the website.
Y'all may want to look at that. She had some great slides that talked about how the schools themselves and how the schools. You want to?
Yeah, I watched it, but I didn't know where to.
Yeah, I'm happy to share that. I think it was so important to me this year that we help legislators who are not typically in the weeds like we are, or to use, I think, Ben's words or Don's or somebody, this is the echo chamber that we live in all the time, and help them understand how our schools are rated and how they're held accountable, and then look at them as a school as opposed to a district. So I see Mr. Scott back there, and he was our gold standard to call out. What happened was DRG School, Ambition Prep, actually outperformed over 300 traditional schools. So when you're looking at a school that's a 700-point school, his score was 412, and he outperformed over 300 at some odd schools throughout the state. Of those 300, about, I don't remember, I don't want to give you the right number or the wrong number right now, but maybe 50 of those were in A districts. And maybe it was 27, 50, somewhere in there. Anyway, I don't remember the right number, but there were a ton of them that were actually in A districts. And to be able to say that, to the eyes of the legislators were like, what do you mean? That your schools outperform schools in DeSoto County, and your school outperformed schools in Pass Christian, and in Rankin County, and in Pearl, and some of these other districts that are rated an A. And so I think that was a real eye-opener for them. And then we had 4 other schools that we were able to talk about and say, these schools also outperformed anywhere from 100 to 200 in those traditional districts. And so it was really, I think, and like I said, an eye-opener for them. And it was something we could celebrate. Amanda's here. We talked about her scores, her kindergarten readiness were the highest in the top 10 in the state. We talked about the fact, just really celebrating the schools and the work that they're doing, and being able to say, you know what, some of those things you hear out there are not really accurate. So let me tell you the whole truth and nothing but the truth. And so I think they were surprised and encouraged by what I was able to share with them. There's some folks here that were in the hearings. So I think maybe Grace can say she was there that day. Wouldn't you agree that they were pretty surprised and shocked maybe? So it was great to be able to share those good things with them, and then ask for some money. There you go. So anyway, yeah.
I think hard to start on the money. They were like, we're good. They didn't even really want, because they'd heard so much about how good the schools were.
Well, the other thing I talked about too that I think is super important is they typically, out in the other part of the world, they don't realize the accountability that our schools are held, the standards that they're held to. And so I pointed out the fact that our schools, not only are they held to the standards from the state, but also to the framework and holding them accountable for not just their academics, but financials and organizational health as well. And so I think they have a better sense, at least the committees do. I can't speak for everybody over there, but at least the appropriation committees have heard that story, and they maybe have a better understanding. So anyway, I think it went well, and I was pleased to be able to share that kind of good news for our schools. Oh, thank you. Yeah, the DRG. I did talk, and that's in the annual report, also about the demand. Our demand actually went up this year from 0.25 to 0.75. So there was three out of 4 kids that wanted to attend a charter school couldn't find a spot. So that doesn't mean that every single one of our schools have, a wait list, but a lot of them do. And so we just got to continue to tell our story and tell it and shine where we can. So.
I was very proud that you did that in the House as well. When the House was like, we don't want to talk about the achievements, we just want to talk about.
Oh, they didn't want to hear it.
All we want to know is what you want in your budget. And Dr. Concherry was like, well, can I just have just 2 minutes to tell you? And then she took that time. And I thought it was very well received.
I think so.
And then the only other thing we did is ask for our general fund money back. And they seemed very receptive of that with the charts that we had and stuff like that. So that concludes my report.
Thank you so very much. Our next agenda item is our committee report. So at this point, we have one request for public comment. Ms. Amanda Johnson has requested to make comments related to Clarksdale Collegiate's corrective action plan.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thanks so much for the time. I do appreciate it. I want to start off my public comments by saying I'm sorry. I apologize for blindsiding you guys when you received a letter from MDE that I could have communicated to you before you received the letter. I don't know if I said that genuinely already, so I just wanted to say it publicly to you guys so that you guys know I hate being blindsided, and so I can just imagine how you guys are feeling hearing about something from MDE that I could have communicated that. And I do know I've been honest the whole time about how I want to improve the relationship between the authorizing board, the staff, and the school. And that starts with me. And so I can't request you guys to do the same if I'm not doing that. So I do apologize for that. And I can just imagine that being blindsided and needing to respond would justify a revocation review, a level 3 intervention, not having any of the information from us, not having had any chance to ask any questions or find out any more information. I can imagine that. I am saying now that we have all the information, have had back and forth between lawyers and me and other individuals and had a chance to review quite a few things. I am asking for a downgrade from revocation review. I would hope that after reading some of our responses, giving context, you will see that this is not a justification for our charter to be revocated. And so therefore I'm asking for it to be downgraded to level 1, acknowledging that I do understand that you might have a concern and understanding that we've remedied some of the main concerns that you guys had, including giving you guys all the information, making a report that was required to MDE, doing that immediately after it was brought to my attention. And so I am asking for that to be downgraded. I have submitted a new corrective action plan for you guys' review based on the feedback. And so it is pretty similar to, as far as the task, to the corrective action plan that I submitted initially. However, I did add a little more specificity about the items that would be turned in and when they would be submitted, where they would be submitted, how they'd be submitted, all of that. And so I have added that piece in there. But I did want to just close with offering to answer any questions that you guys have about the corrective action plan or about the request to downgrade the revocation review to a level 1 notice of concern.
I have a question. So, being in revocation, I'm curious of like the impact when it comes to like funding. Like, can you kind of share a little bit more about that so I can just kind of.
Yeah, so it does have pretty significant impact on the school. So if we're in revocation or if we continue to be in revocation review, we potentially put our current loan on in jeopardy. We risk not receiving any funding. We have received information or a letter from the Mississippi First about our CSP grant, which is a significant grant that will help us to start up with the high school, that we will not be able to potentially not receive any additional reimbursements while being under revocation review. And then also we can't make any new loans or secure major funders with that revocation review, it has a pretty timely impact in that we are opening our high school next year. And so we have purchased 17 acres of land in Clarksdale. We have designs, and we were in the middle of trying to finalize financing, and that's pretty much been on pause. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next order of business, discussion items. I don't have anything specific in discussion items. Someone has, I'd like to move on to the business. Okay, we'll move on to the new business portion of the meeting. We have several action items. 6 now that we have the amended action item. But our first is to take action to consider approval of Ambition Prep's contract amendment request. At this time, I will entertain a motion to approve this amendment.
I so move Candace Robbins.
I second Felicia Evans.
Thank you so much. Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. I'm going to recognize, sorry about that. We discussed this before.
We did.
I apologize.
That's okay. No, thank you, Madam Chair. I did want to just make a comment about this request and preface this by saying that Mr. Scott and I have already met to talk about the next steps for this. But I just have to think that when Mr. Scott was in school, he was a straight A student and didn't do anything else but get 100s on everything he turned in. This request was written perfectly. It wasn't missing a thing. There was no questions. He answered everything thoroughly. It was accurate. He had everything attached. And I could not have been more excited to get this request from him to expand his school. I mentioned a minute ago that his school has been a gold standard for us here as they continue to grow. And they are poised for expansion. And with his, you've heard me talk about it before, with his expectations among his staff and what he wants for those children, I just couldn't be more proud. So I think we had a good kickoff meeting the other day, and he's ready to roll with an application that'll be due April the 1st. So unless anybody has any other questions for me, I just wanted to make that comment because it is exciting.
That's why I jumped the gun. I was very excited. I was thrilled. I love reading that. I'm excited about almost doubling the size
I
in
know.
4 years. That's really brilliant. So,
Yeah.
thank you so much. I will take a step back now and return to the plan. Our next action would be to consider approval of the charter contract for Archway Charter School. Would you like for me to?
No, I think we're gonna first look at the ESP contract. Oh, I'm sorry, that's the next one, Archway. Yep, nope, I think we're good. I think we have everything submitted that we need now. And I think we're good to move forward with a contract with the pre-opening conditions included within the contract, and I think we're, and the delay, yeah, I think we're good. The only thing we'll do is make adjustments to those dates, and we'll be ready to roll.
Much. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve this charter contract. Is there a motion?
So moved, Jay Carney.
Thank you so much. Is there a second? Thank you so much. Any discussion?
Yeah, just a quick question. I'm trying to find the footnotes for, or the quick summary of, like, what were the internet and the enrollment. So I just want to say it's a lot of information. And so just trying to keep up with where I saw some stuff where I had questions. Is there like a, what, I'm sorry. The enrollment, what was the
The enrollment target.
yeah, the enrollment time, like what are the specifications when it came to enrollment? I know that was one of the things that was contingent as as well as the internet. Page 5. Oh, thank you, Jordan. Okay. Just 2 seconds, because I had a
That's page
question.
5 of the contract. So provide evidence by March 31, 2025 that 40% of the enrollment target will have been met and 60% by May 31 of 2025. Those dates will change
Okay.
to 2026. And then the student internet access the same date, so March 31, 2025 will change to 2026. And then the financial, submitting an amended budget by December of 25. So all of those were the pre-opening conditions, in addition to the standard pre-opening conditions that we had. That was voted on, and I'm not going to try to remember dates, but I want to say December 9 and then a special call. And the special called meeting was when, thank you.
And what was the targeted number, if you know that after memory of
It's
as far as
on,
like,
I think it's 118, but let me look at, it's also
it's-
in the
yeah.
contract.
so I'm just, because it's the end of January, and so targeted enrollment 40%. I'm just curious as to like what that number is.
Let me get to their enrollment page here.
Like if that is a feasible, tangible, I'm just curious of like
Thank you.
where did the 40%, 60%?
Those came from the NACSA standards. His proposed enrollment for, I say his, Dr. Herndon's proposed enrollment for Archway for 26-27 will be 208. And so
they need
it
to
would
have
be
40%.
40% by,
208 enrollment by March 31st. And that doesn't, I don't know, that just seems a bit. Yeah, that's a lot.
Well, I don't-
I'm just
The
keep-
number they selected.
yeah,
Right, so you
Well, yeah.
backtrack from that number.
right.
Yeah, this just seems. Yeah, the requirements are just seeming a little bit, I don't know. I just want to make sure we're being mindful of like just I don't know, it just doesn't seem like it's a quick turnaround.
I'm not
from
sure.
March 31st being. So
So that's next
why I'm
March.
asking.
That's
Yeah, we're
March.
talking March 26th,
Oh, that's right, because you did
Half
that.
a year.
because they have delayed their opening.
Okay.
That's right. So they delayed, they were supposed to open in the fall, and then
So
they.
this needs
they
to be
just-
changed.
That will be
on
changed,
the
that's right.
26th.
The dates
Okay.
will be updated.
And
Right.
then student internet access for all students is also March 31st, 2026.
All the dates.
That's right.
Push back.
Everything will be pushed back.
And so when it says proof must be provided, like what kind of proof? I'm just curious of like, what does that look like?
Uh-huh.
Because it seems kind of vague. I'm just curious of like.
We said,
what is-
we had enrollment certification was one, I apologize, y'all, that, you never know how it's gonna be here. Enrollment certification, and I believe the board voted unanimously on these conditions.
No, I have an issue with the conditions. I guess I'm wondering, I'm just saying it's kind of vague, of like, what is, when you say proof, like, what would be considered proof and not proof? I'm just making sure, like, maybe you have.
Certifying adequate internet course, internet access to the course materials to the students. So if there are, I'm just gonna make up a number, if there are 100 kids enrolled, then he'll have to be able to, or they will have to be able to certify that those children have access to the internet.
So I guess I'm wondering, like, is this one of those things where like, hey, we have internet access, check, we don't, check. Is that kind of the, I'm just curious, that it's not like one of those things that like, we have to change anything.
I'm not
So-
sure.
So you get a certification from the parents that we have internet?
Yeah.
And they're certifying it? And that's the, so I think that's what you're asking, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering, if it's just kind of like a self-assessment type thing, or, yeah, you know, and you don't, and then, okay. I was just curious, direction. Okay. That's fine.
I think my only concern is, you know, they've got these goals, but if they don't meet them exactly, is that will we revoke the charter, or is that we lenient with that?
There are situations when a school does not meet their pre-opening conditions that the board can take action and ask the school to consider another delay or.
We don't have to, is what I'm
Yeah, we
saying.
don't have to, no.
No.
So they're like at 37%, I think we'll be fine. Yeah, I agree.
I'm sorry.
I just think we need to extend some grace and mercy there if they're headed in the right direction.
And that, we have done that. I think the board, and I don't want to speak for the board out of turn, but I think the board's largest major concern was based on a situation we had a couple of years ago before you got here, where we had a school that just did not meet their enrollment targets. And we asked them to delay, and they didn't want to.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. I think as a pastor, and I'm coming from, you know, I'm more concerned about progress, not perfection. You know, if they're headed in the right direction, they'll quite meet that.
The biggest challenge is that your monies are based on your enrollment. And so that's the biggest challenge. If you don't have sufficient funding and significant funding sources to support your student population and staffing and all of those things, that's where it becomes an issue. If you don't access, ready to open playbook requires 100%. So we backed off that 100% and.
Gotcha.
And we have the ability to adjust.
Okay.
We need to do so. And I apologize, I have sent a text to ask if we can hold on the work.
Oh, thank you.
So that's what I was doing.
Oh, good.
Maybe somebody will, thank you, pick that up and
Okay.
give us a momentary
Yeah.
relief.
Yes, thank you. I know. It's nice to have that.
As they just keep doubling down. So, I'm sorry, is there any more discussion on the March Trace contract?
I have a question, please.
Yes, sir.
So the NACS requirement of 100%, what date is that, required by for a new?
I'll have to look it up and give me just a minute to get to the ready to open playbook, so.
I guess where I'm trying to wrap my mind around this as I've thought more about it is kind of to the point that has already been made, what's reasonable 6 and 3 months prior to opening? Obviously, when you open, you want to have it 100%, you know, that'd be great. But it's a process, particularly for a brand new school that's starting fresh. And so, you know, I understand the idea of having the phone number as a threshold on that. I'm just trying to figure out do we have a reasonable number in there, or do we need to reconsider that? Is kind of where I'm going with that. And then a second question I have, I don't know if we have this data, but with other schools in Mississippi that open, do we have an idea of how their enrollment has grown 6 months before they opened, or do we have any data that indicates what this looks like in Mississippi?
We do. We have some data on enrollment, not 6 months prior, but we do have opening information where some schools, and I'm gonna do this from memory, but I believe like Smilo Prep, maybe their initial enrollment was 125, and when they opened, they were at 120 or something to that effect. So they were fairly close to that number. I think and doing, again, this from memory, Instant Impact was around 40-ish% there when they opened. Again, that was, I'm doing it from memory. So some of them were really spot on. Again, I can look those up. Give me just a minute.
We had a school open in August of the school year and only met 40% of their enrollment projection.
Yes, I believe that's right, but I'm pulling it up right now.
I guess if August is a benchmark there, I'm wondering what is a reasonable number for, May or March and then May? I mean, is it fair to require a new school to have 40% in March when we've had a school have 40% in August? I guess is kind of the question.
I think, Ben, the reason that we went down that road was because of the issues that we had with the other school, where we were at March and there were, 8 kids enrolled. So I think that, but I can tell you now for projected enrollment for Ambition when they opened, they were at, let's see, their actual enrollment was over what they projected the first year that they opened. Clarksdale Collegiate was right on the money whenever they were right at 100% when they opened. Instant Impact was, like I said, around 40. Midtown was right on the money when they opened. Reimagine Prep was just about 82% when they opened. Revive was at right at 60% when they opened. I've sent y'all this information before, but I can send it again. 80% at Smilo Collegiate, Smilo Prep about 85%, and then SR1 was under 1%. Let's see. First year of operation, the lowest would have been SR1, with Instant Impact being the second. The rest of them were pretty over 60% or over their projected enrollment numbers. So I don't know if that's helpful there. And then back to the Ready to Open playbook here. I'm trying to use somebody else's computer here. Oh. He has a. It won't work. We're trying to navigate a mouse on top of a laptop. So thank you. Okay. Let's see. The school would have received applications from students equivalent to 100% of the school's enrollment target, and that's a one-time 2 to 3 months prior to opening. So that's NACSA's recommendation. So 2 to 3 months prior to the time that they open, they recommend 100%. So, and that's new. They're Ready to Open playbook is new. So that gives y'all some more, numbers to mull around a little bit. I just have a question about, since we've already voted on this, where are we supposed to go from here?
Are there any other questions? At this time, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. At this point, we are going to take up the move to the amended item. It's the ESP contract for Mississippi Global Academy. I think for those of you that have called in, Jordan has sent y'all a copy of this by email. At this point, I will recognize Victoria for any comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Educational Service Provider Agreement is simply, we would refer to it as an ESP. sometimes referred to as a CMO, depending on who you're speaking with. But this is the relationship, the contractual relationship between Mississippi Global Academy and their provider, which is Mississippi, sorry, it is the I'll get it right, Global Public Charter Foundation. And they are contracting with them for third-party services to support the work of the school. This will be a vendor contract relationship, so should Mississippi Global not be satisfied with the work that they're doing, they will be able to terminate that relationship because it is considered a vendor relationship. And if they wanted to hire another group, to come in and provide those services, they'll be able to do so. They have been incredibly easy to work with. We've made a couple of adjustments to the contract, and they made those within 24 hours, and they've been delightful. So I think this just has to be done technically before we can approve the contract with the school.
So it's being incorporated within the contract.
Yeah, and it will be an exhibit within. Yeah, it's been reviewed, vetted by.
And y'all are recommending this.
Absolutely. So Dylan and his folks have vetted this and their attorneys as well. So we feel good about the relationship there and the contract going forward.
That's great news. Thank you so much.
And they have a spot and they have an administrator. So,
Okay, that's great.
yes,
news.
yes.
great
So they
news.
are moving along very well.
At this time, is there any discussion on the ESP contract? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries. And now we will return back to the agenda to approve the charter contract for Mississippi Global Academy. I will entertain a motion to approve this charter contract.
So moved, Jennifer Video.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Wait, where are we? I'm sorry.
We're back on the agenda item C.
Okay.
This is to approve the charter contract for Mississippi Global. They have a motion. Is there a second? Thank you so much. Any discussion on the contract? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. New business item, action item D is to consider approval of Clarksdale Collegiate's corrective action plan. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve this item.
I so move Candace Robbins.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second, Jay Carney.
Thank you so much. Is there any discussion? At this point, I would like to turn the floor over to our Gloria for some
Yes,
comments.
thank you so much, Madam Chair.
You're going to throw things at me.
No, I just wanted to say thank you to Ms. Johnson for working hard to get this corrective action plan put together. I know there was a little bit back and forth on some of the dates and some of the details and things like that. So she did a nice job putting that back together for us and getting it before the board for approval today. And then we've worked out a way for her to submit things in an easier way than having to go through Epicenter. So we've created a little Google tracking, and I think that'll work really well for her to be able to submit those easily and work with dates and times for meetings with Dr. McDonald if those days that we proposed didn't work. But I feel like we're on the right track. So,
Thank you so much for all your hard work.
yep, thank you.
Any discussion at this point?
I know we're approving it. Are we removing the
Yeah.
revocation review to what she asked us for, notice of concern?
Approving the corrective action plan at this time, no.
Okay.
Okay.
And so could we make that motion during the executive session meeting, or could we make it? Yeah,
We need to just finish what's.
well, yeah, I understand that, and then, okay, cool.
Any other questions?
I couldn't hear all that. Just a matter of clarity, the motion for the court is, for us, is to approve the corrective action plan, and then we can take up the issue of reducing the notice of concern. Is that right?
That's right, Ben.
Yes, that's correct.
Before the court.
Yeah,
I caught that.
thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Department of Corrections.
Any other questions or items for discussion? All those in favor of approving Clarksdale Collegiate's correction action plan, please signify their support by voting at this time, please. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I guess the final new item for new business on our agenda today is the performance framework reports for school year 2023-24. Would you like to make a few comments before we ask for the?
I'd be happy to. You don't, first of all, you don't have to vote on those, no. But these are the final performance framework reports that the board has access to. They will be, if they're not already, posted on the website. They will be reflective of our comments as well as the school's comments. And then any questions, we can always entertain those questions. If there's a question about a specific school or anything like that, I'd be happy to do that. But that's an annual, so.
Board members have any comments on those performance framework reports that you received copies of? Any other items for discussion in the new business today?
Well, I had a question for the discussion that you asked. So I'm looking at the LaFleur legacy that meets the expectations, and I'm just curious as to, should we consider lifting them from their notice of concern? Like were they still under?
They haven't met all the conditions. As far as I know, they haven't met everything. And Dr. McDonald, feel free. Dr. McDonald has been working closely with the schools that are on notice of concern. The action that we have taken historically now is if you see a 2-year trend in an indicator or sub-indicator, then we'll flag that. And then if it's significant, then we'll issue a notice of concern. And as soon as that notice of concern has been addressed or lifted, then we'll lift that notice. For example, we had a school that was unable to get their audit submitted on time. They went directly to notice of breach for that reason, because it's a state law and they could not submit it on time. So they went notice of breach initially, and then as soon as they submitted it and turned it into us, then they were back to good standing. So there are a few things, I think, and I'm not looking at that report, but there are a few things still that need to be addressed before they can be removed from their notice of concern.
I'm looking, so it's 2 things that I saw. One dealt with like lunch, who qualifies for free lunch, was where they failed to meet expectations. Other thing was centered around, let me see. They just seem very minor to be on notice of concern, just for
But it's
minor.
not, remember, it's not just 1 year, unless there's something egregious.
But
It won't
yeah,
be just it would be a trend. So for
Right.
example, I think,
And then it says actual enrollment is less than equal to 85% of the budgeted enrollment. And they're like, I think it's 76%. And so it's just kind of like,
do you want to address?
I just don't know if that has any impact to, I'm thinking about full circle about financial security and like, what does this say to funders and the community where there
The
are
one-
notice of concerns
one thing I would-
around those two items.
Yeah, the one thing I would say before it gets to Dr. McDonald is with respect to enrollment is the same thing that I was mentioning to Mr. Carney earlier. And that is it significantly impacts your monies that you receive from the state. Now, Dr. Shaw has requested and the board has approved an amendment to her enrollment because she has not, or the school has not met their enrollment targets since they began.
Right.
And so I think over time, at least twice, that they've amended their enrollment down. And I'm doing that again from memory, but they opened in 2020. But I think twice now that they've asked for an amendment because significantly. And they have been, and I know Dr. McDonald's been meeting with them at least 3 to 4 times already to talk about where they were in the progress. Do you want to?
That's right.
And then also, I would love to hear, like, if you feel like those two indicators that warrants a notice of concern.
To Dr. K's point, we just finished the framework review. You guys had an opportunity to see it at this board meeting. So now, as a team, we'll look back at previous performance framework and the most recent framework to determine if we can lift or modify the current notice of concern.
Because it's like 76%, so it's like right on the, like, it's like approaching, I wouldn't consider it just failed, I would say it's approaching expectations. But
Well, there is a metric built in, and so we're gonna have to report as the metric is required. Those are, all of those standards have been through the APA process and they're approved by the board and through APA. A good example, if Amanda doesn't mind me calling her out here, would be a good, it's a nice one. She's looking at me like, listen. No, to Dr. McDonald's point, after the framework reports are finalized, schools have an opportunity to look, provide their feedback. We, do the same. If there's an error, we'll correct the error, whatever that is. We work with them. We built in additional time last year. We added, I think, a couple of weeks to the time period so schools would have significant amount of time because it is a lot of data. There are over 2,000 data points that we have to look at every year from the State Department of Education, where we get the data from. So with respect to Amanda had some things that are absolutely clear now. And so there is a letter waiting for her that she'll get today that says these things are removed from, and so she'll not be back to good standing because of the other thing at this point. But having said all that, we do address that. So after the frameworks are finalized and then any issues that are cleared up, then we would remove that and then the letter to reflect that. So maybe there's one thing that is not applicable anymore, and then we would remove that from it. And if there are things that are applicable, we'll continue to monitor those. What will happen if we don't, the law requires us to tell a school in renewal and give them a summary of their performance over time. And so if we haven't done our due diligence and said to the schools over time, these are areas that we have some concerns about, whatever they are, then we're at fault for not doing our due diligence. And that's why the intervention ladder is built in there, so that we can alert the schools, and then they have notice, and then they can fix those things, and then we can support them through that process, however that looks. And then hope that, the end goal is to get them back to good standing, but it takes time.
Yeah, and I agree. So let me make sure I'm making sure I understand this. So basically, I think you mentioned that they amended their enrollment.
They did.
So does that mean that they meet their goals and fails to meet expectation properly too, or no? Okay, so the second question would be, like, I agree with you, it's kind of like having some kind of accountability measures, but at the same time, giving the full picture of, like, when you bring that, also you alert other entities that may be funding, and just want to make sure we're sensitive to, like, when we do make decisions and when we do put people on notice of concern, like the potential impact that it has. So I'm not saying, I'm just making sure we're doing our due diligence of, like, not just stamping people, like, and it makes one thing go with the issue, that is an even bigger issue, because now maybe funding, maybe it, it jeopardy, and maybe other things that it can kind of be a domino effect or other negative things that can come out of that. So I just want to make sure we're being sensitive and mindful of those things. I don't have an issue, I'm just making sure that, we're doing.
Yeah, now that those have been finalized, we will revisit to see if we can make modifications to those.
And I believe there is one thing.
Yes, several things.
One thing in particular that I'm thinking about that will be removed from
They would have that at the next board meeting as well. I'll just do that.
it. We'll just do that. We'll just take action on that. Unless the board does, would prefer something, we'll just take care of that.
Are there any other questions?
I'd like to say something, come hear me.
We can.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I think it's been mentioned, we appreciate Samantha and Clarksdale Collision for all the cooperation they've done. I think Lizzie mentioned that too, so thank you for that. In light of what they've done, I'd like to make a motion to move them down to a notice of concern, given the concerns they've raised and in light of their cooperation.
I agree. So, I second it. He made a motion, right? Second, Candace Robbins.
I'm sorry, I was made writing this down. Is there any discussion from other board members?
I agree. I appreciate them being here today and your attitude and your willingness to move forward. So thank you for coming.
Everybody here? Any other comments or any other discussion items from other board members?
So I have a question. So what, would be the conditions then, changing it from, where it is now to what the motion involves? What are the differences?
I need to look up what matters. I didn't bring it with me.
Just 1 second, we're gonna double check that we get this language right. The corrective action plan that we voted on would still be in place. And it would move down
From that to level one,
I need to look into the intervention.
I think you're on 3, so it's for 1. Is that right? Or?
Well, there are different levels, so.
Okay.
You have the intervention letter handy? So, and I'm gonna do this from memory again, because I didn't have all this with me, but I believe the board voted to place Clarksdale on the revocation review because they had committed a serious, or there was a evidence and the board determined a serious violation of the law. And that was why the board took action to go to revocation review. A notice of breach has, also has indicators in it. A school fails to comply with applicable laws, regulations, and or the terms of the charter contract. And then a notice of concern is when a school shows a sign of weak or declining financial, academic, or organizational performance, repeatedly fails to comply with MCSAB or MDE, has a verified complaint of a material concern, receives an overall rating of an approach's expectations on one of the performance frameworks. And it does say that not all conditions above need to apply. As I read this, it may be that it has to be a level 2, but I'll defer to the
Well, it says something
attorney.
against the law, so I'm trying to figure out where.
Let me ask for clarification. Mr. Morgan, clarify which, I wrote that you would move them down the ladder. Did you, I want to give you an opportunity
not
to
sure.
clarify that.
Yeah, that, my intent, I think was that you just stated it was to honor, what they've done to comply with all of our efforts and meet their concern about, next year. And so not to remove, the ladder, but to reduce them to what she had asked so that we could, work with them as they work with us.
So they're currently at a level 3. Is your motion to move them to a level 2 or down to the level 1 notice of concern?
I'm sorry, I thought they were at level 2. So my motion would be to take them to the notice of concern. I think that's what they requested, right?
Yeah.
I believe that is what she requested.
Yes.
So that was my intent, was to honor their request based on what they've done to cooperate and start getting, kind of talking about today.
And from what I heard you read, it sounded like we are in the level 1 and not the level 2.
Right now, we're in level 3.
Well, no, I'm just saying as far as like taking them to level 2, they don't fall under that. I think they're at the point of like, there may be a couple concerns, but
I
just
just
kind of
didn't
level
see
1.
in there,
The reason that they were placed on revocation review was because of a violation of the statute.
Right.
And so I didn't see in that quick look that there was a violation of a statute referenced in notice of concern. Only violation of state law in level 3, the notice of breach, or level 2. But I'm looking to Dylan, the attorney, to clarify that.
We could fit it into one if that's the board's desire. Level 2 is cleaner, but we can certainly look at level 1. If I'm claiming material concern, this would fall under that, so it fit into the level 1. That's
Of
what
level
we did.
1.
What makes a level 2 cleaner?
We have the applicable laws, regulations,
And so what law are they currently, at this point, like with the corrective action plan, if those things are implemented, what law would they be not meeting?
what's the previous action, what they require.
Right.
We've got-
Which they were on the notice of, revocation review, so that is kind of like the action, so now it's kind of
Yeah,
like,
that's
now
why we're
that
in the
we've
corrective
addressed it.
action plan.
Yeah.
Correct.
so to be,
Right.
Action, so we're in
Alright.
the plan to move back. I mean, you can go into either level right now. The
Right.
motion's for level 1.
Yeah.
I'm saying that that's.
with the corrective action plan in place, and, the things that they have coming up this school year, I personally would like to move them back, but I would like to leave them at a level 2 and give Dr. McDonald and the board time to review everything, look at, now that the performance frameworks are finalized, let us go through the next testing period and see, and then move again after that. That would just be my personal preference.
Would it impact the funding for their opening up a high school? So it's kind of like now you're seeing a school that's at a notice of breach to where it'll give funders. That's just kind of how I'm looking at it. It's like, it's more than just,
Okay, so let me ask this, and I don't know if this is possible,
Okay.
so I'm inquiring. Could we move them to a level 2 with a notice that they have, a corrective action plan in place, and upon successful completion would be moved to note? Does that make sense?
that makes sense. I would love to hear what everybody else is
My
thinking.
question is, how does it affect their funding, or how does it affect their situation with their resources? And are we handicapping them by making that decision?
Yes, ma'am. Address the board's question.
Thank you very much. I know, thank you for allowing me to speak. I do understand why the revocation review was in place. So the laws that I believe that were of question, the significant ones were about reporting to Office of Educator Misconduct. That has been done. So we have done our part as a school. It is in MDE's hands now. So that piece has been done. So there are no laws that we have not fixed. And the second thing was about, was more of a breach of contract. And that was with us communicating to you guys. So most schools, good standing is not a level 1, level 2, level 3, anything. And so you guys have to determine that. And so there is something in level 1 intervention that talks about being in compliance. So a verified complaint about being in compliance. So right now, from what I understand and the communication that we've had with lawyers and things that we've said, even though we haven't gone back and forth about each point, there are no laws that are in question at this moment. So us, as far as the violation that was originally stated, as an organization, we did what we needed to do, a thorough investigation, followed up and did all of those pieces. So there's no laws in question. It's a matter of us improving or making these changes so that this doesn't happen again, which would be a level 1, and we would continue the corrective action plan and then return to good standing once we finish all those pieces.
Have we received the final? The Department of Education still has not issued their final.
They've issued the final thing to us as a school. So we did our investigation. They sent a final, here are the results, here is what we will do. So if you're talking about that piece, yes, we have that final.
Y'all finalized that with.
That is the letter that started the whole.
That's the testing piece.
That's the
not
testing violation. It's the personnel. Piece that's still- I thought that was it. So
But there
there's,
wasn't anything against the law, this kind of, because the personnel, this
The personnel was against the law.
So the action that the,
that's what piece that we're talking about, and we have spent the time with the attorneys talking through that and determined that we would wait until MDE had finished their investigation and communication with the person in question, the personnel that was.
More understanding that's still ongoing.
Yeah, right.
But to be clear, that's the piece of that was brought up when we initially talked about this, was the fact that I did not report it to the Office of Educator Misconduct. And I made it very clear that MDE was the one that reported the violation to me. I didn't realize that I needed to take that step. As soon as we had that board meeting that week, I made that report. I've had conversations with them. There's nothing that I can do with that anymore. That is out of my hands. As an organization, we've done everything that we need to do.
I was.
Well, I guess the MDE, you said they sent you something else. Did they say anything about the personnel?
No.
So
So
that's why I'm wondering, what are they going against if, whatever her decision when it comes to her own personal staff, and how that goes against the law, even if MDE has responded. Wait, well, what is it?
That was. That's on the basis of the initial.
Okay, so if they do respond, I guess the question is, would it be,
Next actions the school
but
takes.
but do they have that choice? Because if it's mandatory by the MDE, wouldn't that be mandatory upon her to do?
And to be clear, they're not going to, it's not a response back to me. So we have done what we need to do as an organization. So they are going to respond with the person involved. And so MDE may take the license, MDE may
Okay.
require something with that individual.
Yeah.
And of course, as a school, if something changes about certification or
Right,
anything
of
that's on, a personnel record, then we have to make our decision. But the organization has done everything we need to do to address the situation and the corrective action plan. I understand the notice of concern level 1 is for us to ensure that this testing period goes smoothly. So the pieces that we're putting in place are not to remedy a breach of a law. It is to try to put things in place to make sure that next year we are not having the same conversation. That's why level 1 is what we're asking for and believe is justified.
And just to clarify, so you're asking, basically MDE will decide what happens with the staffing as far as the licensures and certifications and certificates.
We don't give license,
And then
MDE
from
does
there, you'll
licensure.
decide what you want to
Exactly.
do with the information.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay, I have a question. So we're still waiting on a decision from MDE.
Address that, Dylan, please.
So MDE has the licensure issue of the individual that reported this, however you want to describe it. So right now that's out of the school's hands, out of our hands. We're waiting on MDE's office of licensure to conduct their investigations and make a determination on that. So this corrective action plan has taken that portion of our concern out and just just relates to everything else. And I think our Commentary could add to that and with the corrective action plan they have in place now, we just voted on. So now the next question is do we keep them at level 3 for, violation of law as well as not reporting, et cetera, et cetera. Although they've now reported, these are still things that have happened. That's how most cases go on. If somebody did something, then there's issues from that. So if y'all make the determination, then the motion basically go down to level 1. So that's what's currently before y'all. And that's for schools that show signs of weaker declining financial, academic, or organizational performance through ongoing oversight or during annual review. The school repeatedly fails to comply with MCSAB and or the reporting obligations. That's where we fall right here probably. MCSAB receives a verified complaint of a material concern. The complaint that school may be operating out of compliance with their charter contract as an example provided. You can also fit there as well. And then the school receives an overall rating of approaches expectations on any area that's applicable to this as well. And that's where we're sitting right now.
Well, my reason for that is, oh, ahead.
The consequences for the teachers from, Clarksville, Cleveland.
Jennifer, can you say that again, please?
Yes, what have the consequences for the reprimand for the individuals involved, for the teachers involved?
I think,
It was demotion, I think, as well as they won't be able to do the site, they won't be over the testing anymore, from what I read. That's what I read from anything else that I'm missing, but they will not be a part of that process when it comes to, testing. And I think there was a demotion that was included in that, so there were consequences that were made. I'm satisfied. I guess the question is, what will satisfy the board to move them to notice of concern?
Madam Chair, this is Felicia. I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm curious to speak to the conversation. I think I got the gist of it, but as a board, we took action on this already. Pretty recently, so when is really transpired that the board needs to undo the action that it has already taken?
Can you repeat that real quick?
So my question is, we took action on this already. What has really transpired at this point that the board needs to change its perspective on the action that it has already taken?
So there's been ongoing work between the school and Dr. Parmachari and myself in terms of discussing their corrective action plan, and that's what we've adopted today. And then we've also discussed the revocation review process in terms of the hearing if necessary, depending on the outcome of the few things that they have not followed through on. And now the only thing outstanding is the employment of the individual, which has now been put into MDE's hands as to the licensure. And we'll see how that outcome comes before we make any more further action. That would be the suggestion of council.
It doesn't fall under our jurisdiction either. Board members, I don't think I've ever seen that.
are you talking about the personnel?
Yeah.
I think, Dylan has a different interpretation of the statute.
Interpretation.
I have that statute right here. That was something that we brought up that we never discussed because we didn't talk about it last time. But it was brought up that anything engaging in unethical conduct relating to educator-student relationships can justify the board asking me to terminate a teacher. And so if you look at the Office of Educator Misconduct under student and educator-student relationship, there's nothing here about testing violations. All of that falls under Standard 9. There's nothing written here. I'm happy to share this with you guys. And if you have not read it, considering the fact that our high school that you guys approved and were excited about, the facility is in jeopardy, I think it's important to make sure that you have the statute. So here's the statute. And then I think the biggest thing.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I don't know if anybody else wants it, but especially if you look at the brochure in the Office of Educator Conduct, if you look at the definition under student educator relationship, nothing in there is mentioned about testing violations. It's all under Standard 9. So I'll just leave these here.
Dr. Admin, I have a quick question for you if you don't mind.
Certainly,
Dr. Gavin?
I can hear you.
Thank you. What, in your experience, at the Department of Education, what do most public schools do if if a situation like this arises? How would it be handled? Would it be corrective action and then the downgrade of accreditation?
Mark, was it Mark?
Yes,
Say
ma'am.
it again?
What, I was asking what, if for other schools, if something like this had happened, what would those schools generally do? What would the action have been taken against them? Or what would their corrective action plan entail?
Okay, and that's not really inside of my wheelhouse, but I do know that they most likely they will probably be downgraded in terms of accreditation. That would be one of the things for sure.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay.
There are standards that mention all of the pieces that go along with it, and so it would go in front of accreditation. But also so we're talking about very different as far as the size. This was not an accountability testing, so this had nothing to do with accountability. So I know, for example, school districts have downgraded a letter grade because of it. This was not impacting accountability, so we have done all of the pieces that we need to do and feel confident about moving forward and request level 1 be justified. And to be clear, it is not it's a personnel decision about, what happens, and the law that is mentioned just does not reflect the board's ability to require that. And so we've done all the pieces that we needed to do. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So the motion on the floor to remind the board is to move Clarksdale Collegiate down the intervention ladder to level 1 notice. Sorry. Are there any other discussion items? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed?
No.
Nay.
When you vote, can you speak, please?
No, Felicia. No, Jennifer.
Three, and we have 3.
Sandra, are you still with us?
I need something.
What did you vote, Ms. Sandra?
Hard to know that, I'm just sick right now. I'm close to the nose and the ear.
So are you voting no or yes, Ms. Sandra? Okay, thank you.
The motion fails. Are there any other items that anyone would like to bring before under new business today?
I want to make a motion to move Clarksdale Collegiate from a level 3 to a level 2, which is notice of breach. Candace Robbins.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Thank you very much. Is there any discussion or any questions from the board?
Is it on the table, what you mentioned, what you mentioned earlier of if they went to notice of breach and then it was something that would take them to a notice of concern? That you mentioned earlier.
Well, the idea is going to extend.
I was talking to Marcy, I'm sorry. 'Cause she's the
Oh,
one
I
that
just
kinda mentioned it. Okay.
I didn't know if it's possible that would actually be the question of the attorney. If we could do a notice of breach with the
I mean, we can
notice
practically
that
do
they are
what we want
under
to
a
do.
corrective action plan, you know, unsuccessful completion.
We can
So
certainly,
you said corrective action plan, the only action it seems like is the personnel. So like what, so what are the other?
what else is there? I'm
You just
confused.
said-
Yeah.
What you just voted on,
Well,
the
which
corrective
we,
action plan.
right, so we're gonna do that, but I guess the only, one of the biggest deciding factors of moving from the other to the next level is the personnel. So like, if they are doing the corrective action plan, which she said that they are doing and working towards, right? Then what next needs to happen for them to go to those concerns? That's where I'm not, it feels abstract, I'm not sure of what they would need to do in order to go from 2 to 1. So if somebody can answer that, would be helpful too. Which, wait, you talking about this? Oh, so let's get rid of the corrective action. Let's pretend all those things are done and they take care of that. What, in addition to that, what needs to be done is the question that I'm asking. In addition to the corrective action plan.
That lays out.
But I don't.
Can you summarize that for me as an attorney? Can you put that in, as Governor Barber used to tell me, can you tell me in one sentence what that says? Because it appears to me that they're in compliance and they're not in contract. I think we can argue that. I mean, I've always been taught to err on the side of mercy, and these guys are asking for our help. They've done everything we've asked them to do. What more do we want them to do?
So we have to go through another testing cycle because there's no way for them to be in compliance with reporting on the testing without there being a test.
Another testing cycle. When is that? How long does that take? I think we're making a grave mistake as a board.
Dylan, I don't know if this is appropriate, but So, my name is Michael Bentley. I'm an attorney for Clarksdale Collegiate. I've been working with Dylan and Dr. Kamacharya and the staff to get us through all of this, and of course with Amanda Johnson. The reason that level 1 versus level 2 is significant to Clarksdale Collegiate is because of the funding. I'm not here to argue with you about the law. Dylan and I have discussions about that. But from our discussions with Amanda or her discussions with lenders and funders, in their mind, there is a significant difference between level 2 and level 1. And I think that's because if you read the intervention ladder, level 2 suggests a current material breach. We don't think that exists with the cap in place. We think level 1 is appropriate. We think there's a legal basis for level 1. And we're seriously concerned about the jeopardy that the high school and the school is in financially if it remains at level 2. And we believe that the cap, the cooperation, and the efforts we've made justify level 1. And that's why Amanda asked for that here today. So I would just reiterate that. Again, I think that step may seem small, but I think it's important in the grand scheme of things. And so that's why we're here requesting that today.
And then to reiterate your question, sorry about that. So essentially, all this lays out are the things that have to come going forward. So first off, you have verifying testing for quarterly check-ins. So that's every 3 months. You can't just immediately snap our fingers and have the next cycle go through. Same thing for their annual organizational goals. All of this require quarterly check-ins. I mean, they have to continue to be monitored a little further than other schools.
We can't do that at level 1?
Well, certainly.
Can I just,
I
I'm
mean,
sorry,
you're
to
doing it
interject,
regardless.
but I
Right.
have a board member who's having trouble hearing. So if y'all can speak up a little bit, they're having trouble. I think we can hear you. But we have several board members on the call here, and they're having trouble
This.
hearing right here. So just if everybody can speak up, that'll help. Thank you.
So to circle back, the corrective action plan is separate from the notice of concern. Regardless of what action you take.
I agree.
I agree, yeah.
I think we should continue with that. But I certainly have grave concerns about handicapping them from a financial standpoint. If you've ever been in that situation, you'd understand. And I think we need to look ourselves in the mirror, and I think we need to give them an opportunity, hold their hand to the feet to the fire on compliance. But I think it's a major difference going from level 1 to level 2 if we want them to continue operating as a charter school. If we don't, we want to close it down and certainly cause them to be handicapped. Let's continue to do what we're doing, but I think we need to reconsider what their request has been for us today as a board member.
And then to add to that, like when you think about the funding, if they lose certain funding, and then next year they've met all of the corrective action plans, and then the financial piece is lacking, it's kind of like, did we, would they be back on it in the same place that they were because of something, a decision that we made?
I think that is a convoluted two issues there. The financial practices and the financial health of the school is something we look at. 7 different indicators as far as the loans and so forth, as long as they're not in debt default or something like that, that would be how it would be impacted. But,
So if
I'm sorry, Amanda.
That's not the only way that we would be, that's not the only way we'd be impacted. We're growing the high school, and so we cannot secure new financing for the high school under level 2.
No, I understood that, but I mean, I think she was conflating the two issues between that and the framework, so.
So as a reminder to the board, the current motion is to move Clarksdale Collegiate to a level 2 on the intervention ladder notice of breach. Is there any additional discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed?
No.
Ms. Sandra, did you vote? Did you say aye or nay? Okay.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you, Ms.
Sandra.
Sandra.
The motion carries. Are there any other items that need to be discussed under new business today?
Well, I'm just going back to the agenda. I don't know where we are here.
We don't have anything to cover in executive session. Does any board member have a reason to bring that up? Our next regularly
Can
scheduled,
we talk about that when we get done?
our next regularly scheduled meeting will be on March the 10th, 2025 at 1 p.m. at 239 North Lamar Street, Suite 207, Jackson, Mississippi. At this time, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Please identify yourself for the record. Is there a motion?
I so move it.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank y'all. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank y'all so much. We look forward to seeing you next month. I'll be right back. Okay. I know that.
Amy, there was no exit interview.
I'm fine with it. I just hate the handicap.
She said they didn't have the, she said they didn't have. Dylan, with Amy, why didn't we do an exit interview with her?
I'm sure we got
Yeah.
That's just my concern. So I wanna make
That's a valid.
it's not real late to see.
That's that's sort of out of our
Okay.
jurisdiction. Really?
Well, it was, you talking about the personnel? It wasn't everybody, there wasn't everybody, there was a couple that was Gene, and there was a couple people, it wasn't